let's wait just a little bit longer. As far as you know, is she planning to attend? Because we have quite a bit of information to cover. Let me just deal with the roll call and a couple of housekeeping issues. We do have Laura Francis and I are essentially both. Oh, hello? Okay, Laura and I are here. Ed Bailey from Middlefield, First Selectman. Joan Gay representing Killingworth on ETD board. Angus McDonald will join us later. Joe Comerford is our joint executive director. And also we have a visitor today, Dave Lee, who is formerly from First Transit, was the senior VP there prior to retirement a short time ago. And we've asked him to attend because of his potential role in a consultant capacity for us. From a housekeeping point of view, and so therefore we do have a quorum. From a housekeeping point of view, we did have minutes prepared from our July 7th meeting, and we did not send them out. We thought we would deal with the process for that at this meeting. Typically what Estuary does is the committees themselves don't approve their minutes. They are approved by the full board. And what I think I'm proposing would make the most sense is for Joe to send around minutes from our meetings to the joint committee members for their review and for any changes that they might like to make. And then those minutes would go to our respective full boards for formal approval. So we do not have the July 7th meeting minutes today, but we will submit them along with the meeting minutes from today's meeting at our next regularly scheduled meeting. Is everyone okay with that process as far as the minutes of the meeting go?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to move into status update, and Laura, please feel free to jump in. We did meet for the first time and only time so far on July 7th, and quite a bit has taken place since then. Briefly, Estuary spent several weeks working on its issues with DOT with not much success, and has concluded that we need to get the MOA process moving, which is what this meeting is all about. Joe has hired a maintenance manager, and any additional staff called for in the regional bus study, such as human relations or procurement. Those additional staff positions DOT has told us they will consider after an MOA has been executed. We did have a couple of letters of import come in. Our board chairs, Joe Samalas and Leslie Strauss, both wrote to the DOT commissioner on September 17th, asking for some support for ETD's position on the things that we wanted action on. We did receive a reply from him on October 29th, listing a couple of things that they felt they had done. The other thing in that letter that was important, the letter that arrived from the commissioner at the end of October, was a statement that says the Special Transportation Fund is forecasted to run out of funding for new projects as early as next year. The ability to implement our important shared goals for Estuary and Middletown will depend on the solution to the STF funding shortfall. So there's a not too subtle reference to the fact that the state's budget deficit is difficult, and the Special Transportation Fund is not immune to be affected from that. We are hopeful that the additional funds required to merge these two districts successfully will not be negatively impacted. Joe, can you give us an update on any activity on land acquisition for either district?
Sure. So I actually had a meeting today. So DOT is working, I mean, they're definitely moving as quickly as they can on the Middletown site on North Main Street. And so what we've been just dealing with this past week is that after a year of them, a little more than a year of the current owners being very eager to sell and contacting us and DOT frequently to find out the status, now all of a sudden they want to keep one of the parcels. So, I know.
boy.
That's just this week, and it was Monday. I got that call. So DOT asked, can it work with two? And so I had a meeting with the designer, the engineer from our, from the study. And today we met with Dennis and Phil Scarazzo, who does construction side. And the short answer is yes, but it works for today's needs only. So we would be based right where we are today with maxed out on that property. So it's definitely not where we want to be. However, I had a conversation with Joe because I know that the city owns property just north of there, also on the tracks. So what it works out to is they just want access to the tracks, they say. And so Joe says that that's not a problem. They have several possibilities for providing them access to the track. So we're trying to set up a meeting on that now. But otherwise, everything was going really well on that piece of it. That project is funded. And Beverly's trying to get in. Sorry. She's texting me. I think she's in now.
Okay.
And so they're definitely working on it, and they're working at a pretty fast speed on it. There's DOT vehicles there a couple times a week now, doing surveying and the various reviews that need to be done to make it happen.
Okay. Anything on Westbrook for ETD?
No, nothing on that yet.
Okay.
It is in the SIP. That's a positive. And the SIP that came out was advertised back in October. There is funding for the ETD facility. That's in the 3-year, plan.
Mm-hmm.
Happy.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from anyone on the updates? And welcome, Beverly. I'm sorry we had to move ahead without you because everybody's got time constraints. Okay, no questions on that. Let's move to the MOA Consultant. And you all may recall at our meeting in July, we agreed that number one, we needed a consultant. Number two, we were willing to share the costs equally between the two districts. And number three, we had a motion and made a decision to hire Michael Sanders as our consultant. In the intervening months, we have learned that both districts have unused support funding for both of their first transit contracts, which could be used for consultant services. This would not be any add-on cost to either district, and it was felt that that was an option that would be preferable to paying out of pocket for someone when we could actually use the funding that we've already paid in our contract. And in addition to that, to get an individual as qualified as Mr. Sanders was, and that person is Dave Lee. Beverly, you weren't here when I introduced David, but I'm going to ask him to give us just a little overview of his background. And the idea would be that he would act as our consultant in the development of the MOU process if we make that decision today. So Dave, can you give us a little overview of your experience?
Sure. I think I know most of you, or have met most of you in the past in the role I played with First Transit. I was the general manager for Connecticut Transit for 22 years. I retired from that full-time job, and for the last 2 years, I've also served as the area vice president for First Transit, with responsibility for among others, the contract at Estuary Transit District. So I've been in Connecticut for almost 40 years. I've been in the transit business my whole career. I think I understand a lot about how the transit districts operate. I think I met the Middletown folks, or people from in and around Middletown at the time First Transit was engaged to provide initially an emergency contract to manage the system, and then happily a longer term arrangement where we were then, as a corporation, able to give Joe Comerford a corporate role overseeing some of the other locations we manage in Connecticut. Susan is absolutely right that there is a commitment as part of First Transit's management contract to our customers that we provide a certain amount of support staff time as part of the contract. So there is that's really how my services can be provided. First Transit will pay me, and you pay them already, and that's an opportunity for us to be helpful in many ways. And it helps that I know a good deal about who you are and how you operate and what might be some of the issues that you'll have to address in a memorandum of agreement.
Thank you. Any questions for Dave? Any questions on the potential of using Dave via First Transit for our MOA process consultant? Okay. One other thing I would add is that while we would, and I'll introduce a motion shortly, be delighted to have Dave serve us in this capacity, we may, if necessary, want to seek additional consulting services at some point. If we, run into a particularly sticky wicket or something like that, and we feel another person's perspective might be helpful, and that would be subject to our all agreement that we would do that, and any additional cost related to that would be borne equally by both districts. If there isn't any question or additional information that people need, I would entertain a motion for the joint MOA committees to approve the use of David Lee as consultant, whose fees to be paid for equally by the support component of each district's contract with First Transit, with the further agreement that the districts may choose to engage the services of additional consultants on an as-needed basis. Is there someone who could make that motion for us?
So moved.
Second.
Second was that Beverly?
I second it, Joan.
Oh, second. Thank you, Joan. Okay. Further discussion and/or questions? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the motion is passed. That's
Thank you.
great. Thank you. We welcome your help and assistance. The next item on the agenda is an MOA overview that Laura and I have worked on with Joe. And this is basically something that simply identifies the overall structure of what we're attempting to do and identify some of the ground rules. And this is absolutely a draft. Any ideas or suggestions those of you may have are absolutely welcome and greatly appreciated. Obviously, I'm just going to run through it. Stop me if you have questions. The participants will be each of the boards through our committees to our full boards and our executive director, Connecticut Transportation, consultant staff would be Dave, and or someone else if that became something we wanted to do, and the council for each of our districts, and at some point for DOT. The signatories would be Estuary, Middletown, and the DOT, perhaps with approval by the Attorney General. We're not sure if that will be required. Anything that commits to funding very likely will. The goal is to facilitate the merger of ETD and MAP by identifying the major elements required in the merger and establishing a timeline for the deliverables. The responsibilities and roles of the participants. Okay, the consultant would compile other MOA documents, and Dave actually has received a couple of those, which he or Joe will send out to all of the members of both committees. Obviously, those are not identical situations to the merger as we are contemplating it, but they do give an overview of the kinds of issues that they included in similar types of documents. We will also be sending out copies of bylaws of some of these other institutions, as well as our own bylaws, because those will need to be worked on as well. So Dave would review these agreements and bylaws for any applicable provisions to our situation. He would produce a project outline with a timetable for review by the joint committees. We would have in here a target date of February 1st for the MOA to be agreed to by both districts, and March 1st for agreement by the districts and DOT. Laura correctly pointed out that doing this by that date will land us in a situation where if we should need legislative action, the legislature will still be in session at that point. So second,
So
or
that being said, we probably need to possibly engage our legislators early on.
good point.
We might need to put in a what they call like a placeholder bill that we can then populate with content afterwards.
Okay. How about what we do after a couple of sessions with the joint committee? We produce a summary that can be used to brief legislators.
Yeah.
And then proceed along the lines that you just identified if they think that's necessary.
Joe, do we have any of our legislators on the transportation committee off the top of your head?
Joe?
I know Devin Carney, right?
All right.
Wasn't he?
Yes, he was. We do. We have a few.
Okay, very good.
We have a few, and all of our legislators, certainly most of the ones down here do. And we had a meeting right after the study was finished, the governance piece, with most of the MAT delegation too. So everyone's aware of it.
Well, that
we've gotten some of the background work already.
Sure. Okay. Okay, good suggestions. The consultant will also develop our MOA drafts with input from the participants. Probably we're looking at one or two major drafts. He would develop draft bylaws for the merged entity, solicit input from the participants to the drafts, notify people of any changes, etc., and attend all of our meetings. A note that Dave is not a principal, will not be tasked with negotiating or communicating directly with DOT representatives. His work and contact will go primarily and through Joe Comerford and our committees. The districts would provide specific items to be included in the MOA and provide timely response to drafts and issues of concern. We would inform our boards of directors and towns of the status of the MOA and any issues attendant to the merger. And we will develop and manage the process for the approval of the MOA by each district. DOT would identify its contacts to work with the board committees. It would provide items it requires to be included in the MOA. It would provide, hopefully, timely response to the MOA drafts and provide timely written funding commitments, which we anticipate there will be a number of those in the MOA, including those covering additional consultant studies as well as additional positions. The council would review the MOA for each district and the bylaws for the merged district. It would, the DOT council would determine the status of the MOA at the state level. And the council would also help us determine the mechanisms and the process of the merger by the various towns. One of the things that the bus study recommended is that the estuary infrastructure remain in place and that Middletown area transit be subsumed under that. If we go with that option, it will probably simplify the process of what the mechanics are for the merger. Any questions or comments on any of that at this point? Okay, process and ground rules, and these things to me are and Laura are very important. The first is we would conduct an initial meeting with DOT that would include Laura, Joe, and me, and that would determine who the DOT participants would be, how they want to be involved and when, and which items they feel should be included in the MOA. This is a fairly new concept for the state. There really isn't another merger like this that has occurred. So this is breaking new ground for them as well as for us. The interaction of Middletown and Estuary is what's, I think, very critical in this process. And what we're suggesting is that our two boards through these committees agree first on the MOA items before discussing them with DOT. And we would, as part of that process, identify any deal breaker issues at the outset of the process. For example, the forgiveness of the Middletown $900,000 loan would presumably be a deal breaker if we weren't to receive assurances of that. The two districts would channel requests for items to be included to their respective chairs of the joint committees. And the important part is that we are doing this as one entity, that Estuary needs to support what Middletown wants and vice versa. We need to assume that your position is our position and agree to work collaboratively to resolve any areas of disagreement, and there may be some, and show a willingness to be flexible and compromise. That I think is very critical for the success of this, and that as we approach this, it's really a friendly merger, and we are looking to provide as much support to each other as possible. We do agree to conduct the process with maximum transparency and accessibility with each other. If any of us has concerns, let's bring them up before this group and deal with them at that level, and not bring them up to external groups. We agree to conduct the process with, oh, I repeated that, maximum transparency and accessibility. So I guess we're going to do that twice. The joint committees also represent partners of equal standing. Laura and I are essentially co-chairs, but I've offered to conduct the meetings to streamline the process and discussions, and we'll develop agendas with consultation from her and of course from Joe. And again, our consultant, Dave, will act as staff to the committee. He will not negotiate with DOT. And what will happen is that Laura, Joe, and I will do the initial negotiating with DOT. I think I left that out of this revision here, Joe. I meant to include that. And that in order to keep it a fairly small group, Laura and I will come back to our respective committees with the results of those negotiations, decision-making points, etc., and subsequently take that back out to our full boards as necessary and appropriate. Any questions or comments on these processes? General agreement, I hope. Okay. The general outline of the MOA would include the goal of the MOA, a time frame for completion, various transition considerations, how we're going to run the districts during the period during which the transition takes place. That could be as long as 2 years. So issues of staffing and governance will need to be identified. It will also identify key issues in each of the following areas: finance, governance, operations, facilities and maintenance, labor, and any merger related special studies. That's not meant to be an exclusive list. We may dispense with some of those or deal with them rather quickly and add others we hadn't thought of or felt needed more attention. We will look at as many of these in the MOA process as we need to. With regard to the next steps, obviously we're having our joint meeting here today. I will notify Mike Sanders of the change in our consultant decision and a potential use of him or others for additional consultant work as necessary and agreed to by the districts. And each district would begin to compile a list of items that they would like to see in the MOA for discussion at our next meeting. We also have thought about a meeting schedule. This being a very aggressive timetable, what with 3 of our members being full-time select persons of their towns. We understand how busy you are and want to be able to maximize the use of your time and make it as efficient as possible. And Joe produced a schedule of meetings that would have us getting together for 1 hour every 2 weeks in order to meet our goal of an April or a February 1st agreement between the districts and a subsequent March 1st agreement by DOT. Comments on that? Is that a doable schedule for everyone? Do we want to take another look at it?
My opinion is that we have to try to do this and keep it going.
Okay.
I think that's why we chose Fridays. Hoping that those of us kind of try to keep our Fridays light or lighter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with Laura. Yeah, my Friday, I try to keep it open, so I do have availability on Friday, so that would work for me.
You'd be able to do that, Ed? Okay.
Yes.
Beverly, how about you?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
It will work. It can work. But can
Okay.
can we get the slides of all this information?
Hey,
Sure.
Susan,
Yes,
I
Joe.
in my calendar, and for December 18, we already have a Nine-Town Transit meeting. Unless I have my calendars wrong.
Oh, that's correct, Joe. We do have a,
You are correct. Yep, I missed that.
okay.
And that one starts later. And if I ever could do the afternoon, that one.
That would work for just that 1 week. Let's
Yeah.
say around 1 o'clock or 2.
Does that work for everybody?
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Yeah,
Okay.
1 o'clock. I would rather do 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for purposes of only that one meeting, it's Friday, December 8th at 1 o'clock. All the others will be at 11 a.m. And we will try to get as much material out to everyone as possible. So everyone has time to review everything, and we're not going to get everybody together and just chat. We're going to see if we can actually move the ball down the field. Okay, so
And Joe, if you can get this out, send this out to us an email as soon as possible. So we
I
get
will.
the
Yep, I'm
calendars.
going to send this and also the other items that Susan mentioned earlier.
Will that be the
Um,
standing, the Zoom meeting? Will that be the standing Zoom meeting credentials for all these meetings?
Yes, I hope
Okay.
so.
Okay.
I tried to make it that way, and
Okay.
I haven't done a standing meeting yet. So I'm hoping it's going to work.
Yeah, I haven't done it either. So that's why I was surprised to see that.
It gives you the option to set recurring, but it's odd. It then makes you do a Outlook invite to set the recurrence. It's weird. So
Susan,
it should work though.
Okay.
I think January 15th is also a Nine-Town Transit Board meeting.
It shouldn't be, is it? Because we don't meet in January.
Okay.
I don't think we shouldn't, right? Oh, we
That's
haven't set our schedule yet for January, but
Right.
but we should be, since we're December, we should be February again. And we'd be the third week in February, which will be
correct.
the 19th,
Do any of these,
and then it would be March.
okay, do any of these meetings conflict with the MAT board meeting schedule?
They're Thursdays.
They're Thursdays. Okay. All righty. Well, let's do that with amended as we discussed for that Friday, the 18th. Obviously, if things come up and we need to readjust, we can certainly do that as we go forward. But it's always been our experience that we all do a little better if there's a set schedule. So just to recap, the next steps for the process are going to be, Joe will send out information from this meeting on the schedule, on the sample MOA agreements these happen to be from Ohio and Vermont, other transit district consolidations. He's going to send out the bylaws from ETD and MAT, and I think there was another set of Wyndham bylaws, right, Joe?
Yeah, I can send those too. Yep.
We will be working on bylaws at the same time as we're doing everything else. We will ask Dave, and Laura and I can work with him and Joe to create a project outline for what needs to happen when in order to meet that particular time frame of a completed product by February 1st. And we would review that at our meeting. And the last thing is that each district should begin to compile that list of items it would like to see included in the MOA. And several of them will be the same for each district, and then each district will have some that are perhaps unique to their own situation. Any other comments on next steps from you, Laura or Joe?
Good.
You all set?
No, nothing from me.
Okay.
Well, actually, the one thing is that I think we had talked about meetings of the independent of each of the committees, right, for setting out those goals.
Yes, I
So,
think.
If everyone wants to give me their availability, I can get those set for each of the two committees.
Okay, because I think what needs to happen is each district needs to meet among itself
Correct.
to kind of flesh these things out and come to agreement on within their own body and then bring them to the full joint committee for consideration. So yes, Joe, if you can reach out to both groups to set up a meeting to be able to do that, that would be very helpful.
Is our goal to have that done before our next joint meeting?
Yes, if at all
Okay.
possible.
And next week's it's not going to be good, obviously. So I will try earlier that week of our meeting then.
Okay.
For both groups.
That sounds good. I think let's get as much done as we can, as soon as we can, and there will always be things that are outliers, and we'll have to deal with those as they come along. Okay. I don't see a need for an executive session. Laura, are you okay on that?
Yep, I'm good with that.
Okay, it's nice not to have one for a change.
Yeah.
Okay. And are any other new business before the committee? Okay, well, this has really been an organizational meeting. We're looking forward to Dave hitting the ground running, which he will certainly be able to do given his background and knowing the players the way he does and the issues. So I guess at this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I moved.
Oh. And second was
I'll second it.
Joan. Thank you. Everyone have a wonderful isolated holiday.
You too.
Stay safe and thank you. We appreciate it.
Happy
Thank
and
you.
healthy
Bye.
Thanksgiving to everyone.
You bet. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.